Good evening. I'm Cheryl O'Neill, the president of the Lynn Teachers Union, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's Public Education Forum. Our union has worked hard over the past year fighting for funding for our schools. The legislators heard our voices and have responded positively. If legislators work together to review amendments collaboratively for the Student Opportunities Act and vote in the affirmative, then education across the state will receive $1.5 billion over the next 7 years. This is exciting news, but it is our duty as voters to ensure we receive the funds for our schools and understand how they are being utilized for our students and educators. Tonight is an opportunity for us to learn more about the candidates running for school committee. Each candidate has submitted a one-page statement about their vision for the Lynn schools, students, and educators. The candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question and give a closing statement. I would like to introduce Brian Castellanos, Donna Coppola, John Ford, Lorraine Gately, Tiffany Magnolia, Jared Nicholson, and Michael Satterwhite. Our moderator for this evening is Miriam Rodriguez-Fusco. Our timekeeper is Gail Thomas, retired teacher. Miriam is a speech teacher in the city of Lynn and the second vice president for the Lynn Teachers Union.
I have a little plan for you guys here. I'll start off with the first person at the table. For the second question, I'll start off with the next one, and the third question, I'll start, and so on. And at the end, you'll each have 2 minutes for a closing statement or adding anything extra that you might have wanted to say. The first question is, Mr. Castellanos, is for you. How do you perceive the job of a school committee member?
Hello? Can you hear me? I don't need a mic. So this isn't a job to me. This has been my... Hello? Oh, excuse me. Good. So how do I perceive the job of a school committee member? This is not just a job. I have made this my passion, my craft. It's bigger than me. As a first generation low income kid, growing through the Lynn Public Schools, it's been so remarkable and inspiring to see firsthand the work we do in this district. It's been a wonderful experience as a social worker, as a child protection social worker. I get to work in the schools day in and day out. It's my responsibility to problem solve. When I get issues constituents reach out to me about, I take it very personal. I make sure I problem solve and I get things done. My number one strength is my ability to just never quit. I think whenever I see a problem, I work diligently to make sure that gets done. There's multiple issues from social and emotional learning students to overcrowding to the safety and well-being of our students and teachers. Also, I think it's my responsibility to cultivate and advocate for better resources and make sure that programs, teachers, and parents are engaged and able to really thrive in our district. And it's my responsibility to stick up for those public educators and teachers, students, and parents who need to have a voice. I'm responsible and I'm always going to be pursuing social justice, whether I'm elected or not. I said that 2 years ago. I mean it now more than ever. It's something that as a school committee member, I think we all represent change. We are the change agents in this district that we represent at Lynn Public Schools, and it's a passionate honor to serve every one of my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Donna Coppola, and I think the job of school committee is extremely important. It's probably the number one thing is, of course, educating our students so that they go out in the community and they become productive citizens and make a difference in our community for us. But not just educating the students, but also educating parents of what we're asking of them is really, really important. But also educating the community to understand many things, not just what we're doing within our schools, but also the needs that we have in our schools. So they understand, they are the taxpayers, and we have to explain to them and convince them of things that we need funding for and to make a difference on. But also, number one, of course, we're in charge of making policies for the administration and so that things run smoothly. And also, I would think that the big piece is letting the community know that even though they don't have children in our schools, it's important for them to know what's going on and be involved and help us, because there's times when they want to sell their property or move on, and the people that they're going to want to buy their property are going to want to have good schools. So it's really important to educate them, because in the long run it affects them financially. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Hi, Ed reform of 1993 pretty much reduced us to a policy-making body, but in addition to the policies that we make and create, I think my biggest responsibility is to the kids, the teachers, the administration, and primarily the superintendent. One of our charters is to support the efforts of the superintendent. I think that we have to make sure that the kids have a clean, safe, uncrowded work environment where they can learn. We have a great educational system in Lynn, but if we don't do something about some of the problems we have, we're going to lose our academic edge. And we're going to lose the edge we've gained with MCAS. We've got some great programs in this city. We've got some great teachers. But I think it's effort on our part that's going to keep the good conditions we have with the teachers and the academics. We have to improve upon our classroom space. It's very important. I just think that I love the job, as Brian said. I'm very passionate about this job. Every 2 years I say, yeah, maybe I've had enough, but every 2 years I know I want more. And I think I bring a common sense approach. I think I bring some level-headedness to the board, and I know I'm definitely in here for the right reasons, the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Ms. Gately?
Hi, first of all, I'd like to thank the Lynn Teachers Union for having me here tonight to speak to you. I myself have been a teacher in Lynn Public Schools for 33 and a half years, and I taught middle school and high school science, general science, biology, and I loved it. And when it came time for me to retire, I decided that I was going to retire at my 80%, and then I was going to run for Lynn Public School Committee so I could have a say on what goes on in our schools. I found out that it's a lot of policy making, and I do a lot of listening to the students, listening to the parents, listening to the teachers, and then I address those issues with the administration, and I try to clarify it or find some kind of change. So now, here I am. We don't have a new Pickering Middle School. We don't have a new middle school. There were over 300 students coming into the middle schools from their elementary schools, and what are we going to do? So I was just thinking outside of the box like I tend to, and I called Dr. Tutwiler and I asked him, would it be possible if we could put a middle school of some sort in the annex for Lynn Tech? And now here we have the Discovery School. They ran with it, but I called him, and that's how I think. I want to serve you. I always have. I love serving the public. Anytime you need me, feel free to call, because I will be your voice, and I have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Magnolia.
Well, as the only challenger here, I cannot answer this job from experience. All I can tell you about is my vision. And my vision is that a school committee member is like a knitter. And please follow me on the metaphor here, I'm an English professor. A knitter takes strands of what seems like raw material and creates something new from them. It seems to me that a school committee member has to be a liaison, a megaphone, an advocate, has to be somebody who can bridge the gap between policy and the practical realities in the school. I am the parent of a Lynn public school kid, and I would like to know how these policies get translated into what I see every day. And that to me is what the school committee's job is to do, is to kind of think of the structures and the systems that allow that kind of communication to happen. One of the things that I haven't seen in my time as just a parent attending the school committee members is a stronger voice for the union with regards to the school committee, and it's something I would like to work on if I was elected. When I was the president of the union at North Shore Community College of the faculty and staff, one of the things I advocated for and was successful in doing is having a 10-minute state of the faculty and staff address to every Board of Trustees meeting. This is not a voting role of the school committee, but it gives a sense of what's coming on the ground from the teachers, and I think it's a valuable insight. However that happens, I would be happy to work for it. The other thing I think is super important is that we give parents equal voice. We've heard a lot about students. I think a school committee member is there to amplify the voices of parents in aggregate. I'd also like to see a 10-minute state of parents. We have school councils, we have PTOs, we have representatives who can talk about the parents' experience. And when we have all those voices together, we can make something beautiful, like a sweater or a scarf. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you, and thank you to the Lynn Teachers Union for hosting us tonight. So, for me, the job of a school committee member, first of all, is a huge honor. I really believe that public education is one of the most important things that we do as a city, and so I'm thrilled to be involved. And it feels just imperative to me, particularly because my wife is pregnant, we're expecting our first child, and we really want to send our future kids to great public schools, and so I try to bring that vantage point to my work. You know, in terms of what we're doing, I think a big part of our role is that we hire and evaluate the superintendent. As my colleagues have said, we play a policy-making role in setting the district's policy, but also trying to go out and look for best practices on policy and bring those to the district. We play a major role in the budget, not in setting the total amount of funding that we get, but in allocating the funding that we get and approving that. And related to that, while we don't set the number of funds that we get, we can play an advocacy role in the process, advocating on issues where we feel like the decision makers are not us, but they affect our students. And that's definitely something that I've tried to do, particularly on education funding. I wrote a letter to the editor a couple weeks ago to the Boston Globe about a perspective that they had in their article about education financing that I thought needed feedback. Another role that we have is communication. So we talk to students, to parents, to community members to get their feedback so we can channel that feedback to the appropriate people. And that's an important part of our role as well, and it goes both ways. So I see my role as getting feedback from the community and also sharing on behalf of the school department what we're doing and trying to go to events where the community is. I speak Spanish, and that's been really helpful in being able to go to meetings, gatherings, events where there's a lot of Spanish speakers and being able to share what I think we're working on and seeing and hear and get that feedback from parents and community members of what they'd like to see in the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Satterwhite.
Thank you, Michael Satterwhite. My response to this is I feel as though it's not just, our job is not just as policymakers or a body of policymakers, because Lynn Public Schools is the largest employer in the city. We also manage one of the largest budgets in the city. I think that it's a hard job. I think that we always remember that we're dealing with lives, futures, and communities. And it's important that we be that voice for our students, for parents, and for educators in our city, in the state, in the country. It's important to make sure that the public schools is not forgotten. I think that my job has been on the school committee is being the chairperson of the negotiation subcommittee and negotiating contracts that are fair and reasonable and in good faith with the different bodies of unions that the Lynn Public School does business with. Being on the policy subcommittee and creating policies and seeing what works, what doesn't work, best practices like my brother Jared said. And most importantly is being on the subcommittee for personnel where we interview and hire some of the most vital positions in the district. You know, we know that we've had issues in the special education arena, and to be able to be a part of hiring the special education director was very important. And then with the new budget, working with the superintendent to bring on additional direct service staff to help improve our special education experience for families and for educators is extremely important. So I think it's a hard job, like I said, but it's a job that I love doing. You know, I'm a father, I have kids, my daughter's at Pickering Middle School, and I have two other kids that are young, but they're eventually going to have to go to the Lynn Public Schools. So I love my job, it's a hard job, and I appreciate the honor to be able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Capola, can you start off the next question? Here it is. The funding of Lynn Public Schools has been a controversial issue over the past several years. This year, the state allocated $18 million more to the city of Lynn. As a member of the school committee, what does fully funding the schools mean to you, and do you know how the Chapter 70 funding is managed?
Okay, it has been difficult in the past with the city side telling us that we were at net school spending and the school side saying that we weren't at net school spending. And that was difficult, but I believe that there's no sin in just being at 100% net school spending. With the needs that we have, you know, low-income students, our special ed, and also, you know, our English language learners requires more funding. And I think that we really, as a school committee members, must push for that we need additional funding. I think that, you know, the committee that is sitting there is very well aware that we value our educators, our support staff, or anybody who works in the Lynn Public Schools, so that it's important that we fund the contracts. I think some of the, so we're going to still have to push and insist that funding that came to the city needs to still come over to the city side. But we have problems in the legislature also, as far as our money goes. You know, we have a legislature that thinks that we should get this amount of Chapter 70 money, and a governor who feels differently. So it's a difficult push and pull all the time. It's not like, you know, somebody hands us the purse strings and we are totally in control of it. We have to work with the other side also. But I think that it's important. I think people at this table, when it was budget time, were pushing and asking for other things. And I think, well, I will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
Hi, this goes back, in 2010 I was working for State Rep Stephen Walsh, and at that time I asked Steve what I could do to help the Chapter 70 money come directly to the city. He said it'll never happen. It'll never happen, forget it. I mean, the city is only obligated to pay 100% of that school spending. Mayor McGee has said he will do 105 this year. So that's 5% more than he actually has to do. A lot of the money goes to other services within the city. You know, but I think we need to come, we only got to $18 million because they finally fixed a formula that hasn't been working since 2000. So it was 19 years in the making. We finally got some additional funding. We're going to get more funding than that down the road as they continue to fix this formula. But we're gonna be limited as to how much we get, no matter what the city is. Until they change the contractual obligations, we're not gonna get any more than 100 to 105%. That's the best the city will do. But I just think we need more money to attain and retain the teachers that we have and teachers we're gonna need in the future. I think we need to have more minority hirings. We need money for all of this, and it has to come from the Chapter 70 money.
Thank you, Ms. Gady.
Well, when I look at and I think about $18 million more to the city of Lynn, I can only commend my fellow school committee members who went to Malden High School in January. Cheryl O'Neill was there, the unions were there, and we just stood up and we fought for them to change. We let the legislators know that we want to change the formula so that our city could get the finances that we needed. And we did a great job. And I do remember us being there, holding the signs, being really proactive. To answer the question of what we're going to do with that money, first of all, we have to realize that the Chapter 70 money goes to the city, and from what I understand, that a lot of the money that came in went to new hires, and those new hires all have health care benefits that we have to pay for. So that's what I understood. And the city is finally going from shaky grounds financially to leveling off. So I'm looking at 18 million this year is very hopeful. And hopefully next year, even more services will go on to teachers, hiring new teachers, getting more teachers into our schools. And that's what I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Magnolia?
Thank you. So in my other professional life, I have been doing a lot of advocacy with the Massachusetts Teachers Association, which I know is not the same union as the AFT. But we've been working on some of these school formulas, or at least I have directly since 2007. And even though I'm in higher education, I was one of the lobbyists for the MTA that connected K through 12 locals within then Senator McGee's district, so the Essex district, to directly go and lobby legislators for things like funding. So I've been aware of this issue with regards to the funding formula, even though I'm not in the K through 12 world, for quite a long time. And I would like to just parse out the statement here. A lot of times when the state allocates money, we don't necessarily always get the money that we have been allocated. So there's always a discrepancy between those things. I'm in the community college, you don't have to tell me about that. But the other part of this is that I think it's super important to be a realist in private and an optimist in public, which is to demand that our students get more than the just over $13,000 per pupil that we're getting right now. I think it's worthwhile to not start at 100% or 105%, but to look at our neighboring communities and advocate for the per pupil spending that our peers have. Why should we be different than Peabody or Salem, even though they are smaller communities? We have similar racial diversity, we have similar special ed needs, and we should be closer to 15,000, not the 22,000 Boston has, but closer to 15,000. And so I think to start with the state allocation is the wrong way to make the argument. I think we start with what our students deserve, and then we make them give us that money. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nicholson?
Thank you. So what does fully funding the schools mean to me? So I think about that in two ways. First, there's the goal, the necessity of the city to meet at least 100% of net school spending to comply with the Chapter 70 rules, and that, that's, as we've discussed, that's something we've had issues with in the past that we're on track to maintain. But that number, 100% of that number, is based on the Chapter 70 formula, which we for years have identified as being broken. So if you're 100% funding a number based on a formula that is broken, then you're shortchanging us. And so that's why we're fighting for the reform of the Chapter 70 formula. And the act is now pending in the legislature. We got to keep pushing so that we make that happen. And then we'll get 100% of a number that's actually representative of what it costs to educate our students. And that's what the state constitution requires. For us to provide the adequate level of public education to all students. And the way the formula has been conducted in the past, It was undervaluing the cost of educating certain student populations, of which we have large representations here in the city of Lynn. English language learners, low-income students, students with disabilities. And if that formula is broken, even if we hit 100%, 105% of net school spending, we're not going to have the funding we need to meet those needs. How Chapter 70 funding is managed in 30 seconds. Chapter 70 funding there's two numbers that we start with at the state. The state has a foundation budget number, that's what it costs to provide education to the students, and then it's how much they're going to give us. And then the city is required to make up the difference from its own funds. That's the revenue side. On the expenses side, in terms of the spending, the city decides how much of the education budget is going to come to the schools, and they give us a number. That's the school budget. And then a certain amount of education spending stays on the city's books. Things like benefits, maintenance, tuition, and that's how it works.
Thank you, Jared. This is a two-part question. I think that I want to answer the first part, which is, what does fully funding the school mean? I think that fully funding is providing all necessary services so that all students receive the best possible education. And we know what that means because we saw that based off of data and what is really required of us, that we're short by about $45 million that should be brought into the Lynn Public Schools. Even if we get that amount of money, I still think that there's still room for more. And I think that the teachers will agree that more money can only bring better things to the district. Fully funding our schools is not just a city thing either, it's a state issue. You know, there's things that we need to correct, there's mandates that are put upon our district that we need to comply with, yet little funding that comes with it. So we need to make sure that fully funding our schools, you can, again, it will cost a lot, but it's something that I believe should be fully funded in our school. Now, the Chapter 70 funding, as my colleagues and Tiffany said, is a formula. The city manages it. At this particular point in time, we do have a CFO on the city side that's working to assure compliance with our business manager on the local school side. I think that that number is a number that is set in stone, and the city knows that they just have to come up with that particular number. We've heard from school committee member Ford where the mayor has said that he'd at least comply with 105% of what's required of the city, but that is not fully funding the schools. Fully funding the schools is a very different question, a very different topic, and we can't forget about that, and we have to continue to work to get more funding for our schools. Use your voice, use your votes. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just pass the mic down to Mr. Castellanos. Oh, no, Mr. Castellanos. Mr. Ford, just pass, keep going.
Well, everyone, what they said. I don't think, so just I want to echo what Lorraine said about the forum that we got to attend about, you know, obviously the issues with the Chapter 70 funding and our future, kind of the root of that development. I remember there was a quote that stuck with me. It was, "Why should living in a different zip code dictate educational equity?" That stuck with me because I think it's controversial in so many ways because, you know, coming up through the Lynn Public Schools, I remember having, when I went off to college, having a 781 zip code was definitely, I had a label, I had a stigma with me. Just because I went to a different district that's, you know, urban education, doesn't mean I didn't receive a high quality education. And that's definitely something that I'm very proud of. And when it comes to the Chapter 70, I think as a member of the school committee, I think fully funding our schools means to fully support and advocate for more. I think be able to strategically develop a financial growth plan for our educators, our programs, and thinking outside the box is a responsibility for us, especially when it comes to funding, because you can't put a dollar on a child's education, I'm sorry. It is so important and vital to invest in our children and our students. As a DCF social worker, I have kids all over the district who are receiving great education, and it's so important to fund these programs. The Chapter 70 funding, I think, we at the table have described it very much so as it's a broken, unadjusted rate system. They hadn't been adjusted since 2003. I think the mechanisms are being obviously implemented at the state level, and it's very important to advocate with our city to look outside to the state to adjust that so we have the most funding we can. I think that includes going above the net school spending. 105 would be the ideal. I'm glad that the mayor is pursuing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cassano. Just pass it down to Mr. Ford. Mr. Ford, will you start the next question? Actually, is a follow-up question to the one you just answered. The school department only received $10.7 million in the budget approved in June 2019. How has the $7.3 million kept by the city been utilized for schools?
I would say, to make it a very simple answer, the $7.3 million was used, I'm sure, to keep the buildings going. I talked to Mr. Duncan before tonight. I sent him some paperwork. He was impressed about how much money is put back into the buildings in Lynn. We get 10 schools that are 100 years old. We got one that's 99, one that's 98. We're throwing bad money after good, year after year. We need new schools. This is not a secret to anybody that works in the system. The schools are drafty, they're moldy. It's the nature of the beast. But that's much of that money goes to updating and keeping these buildings heated, lighted, and safe. We've replaced all the boilers, roofs and windows. We do doors all the time. We do security cameras. There's tons of money that goes into the Lynn Public Schools every year. Some of it it's all lighting, but some of it is Band-Aid. And that's something I really have a problem. I think we're wasting a lot of money, but we have to keep the schools open.
Thank you. Ms. Gately?
I think the 7.3 million went on a lot of new hires this year, especially in special ed. I believe that's where a lot of the money went. And as I mentioned earlier about the healthcare, I was very happy with the teacher's contract. I think that for the way our budget in the city is going, that it was a fair contract. I think Sheila and the negotiation team did an excellent job. I was extremely happy, and I believe that the 7.3 million helped for substitute teachers to get a raise so that when you're out a sick day, you can actually have a substitute teacher in there and not a teacher just covering for you throughout the day, which costs more. I agree with Mr. Ford that we spend a lot of money on keeping our buildings going, and we really do need new schools. But the question is, how are we going to get them when the city is just leveling off financially, and we are trying to get in the pipeline again with the Mass Building Association so we can get those new schools. And we need your help to get parents involved, to get parents to push for these new schools to people that no longer have children in Lynn Public Schools, as Mrs. Capola had mentioned earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Magnolia.
So I can't answer this question directly because I'm not privy to budget information and where it goes as a not standing member of the school committee. However, I will tell you something that I find a little bit abhorrent. If the answer is indeed that the 7.3 million goes to keeping the lights on, that is an outrageous electric bill. And the amount of money that it would take to do small improvements to reduce those costs would not be excessive. I would also like to say that as part of this sort of push for new schools that I've heard a lot of folks talk about, I was part of the campaign to get the new schools in place. I attended like one of the kickoff rallies. I pulled my daughter in a little red wagon all around our neighborhood handing out flyers. And at the time, as a member of a different union, I was appalled that the onus was put on teachers to do this. The fact that the school committee, the fact that the mayor's office, and the fact that the then superintendent did not think that it was their job to push for new schools and to advocate for students, to me, was shameful. And I'm saying that as somebody who is not necessarily on the inside in a way that I am hoping to be more on the inside. I was sort of on the outside looking at it. But the only way we get to not having to spend $7.3 million to keep the lights on is by a concerted effort by all parties involved and not expecting unions to both pay their dues and fund these kinds of things.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you. So under the Chapter 70 formula, like we were talking about earlier, the state sets some money about how much it costs to educate the students based on our population, and then they give us a number of amount of funds based on the amount of wealth that they measure the city to have, and that's how they determine how much of the budget is going to be paid for by the state and how much is going to be paid for by the city. The city then has that total number, and it's up to the city to allocate that between the school department and then on the city's own operations, which it considers to be educational in nature. And so that split is roughly 2/3, maybe a little under 2/3. And so the entire education budget in the city of Lynn, about 2/3 of that is in the Lynn Public Schools, and the rest of it is on the city side. Things like insurance, benefits, maintenance, some tuitions, the things that Chapter 70 considers to be education funding that can count towards the city's net school spending number, but that aren't paid for by the Lynn Public Schools. So when we got the 18 million, that 10-7 split, I believe, is representative of that split of this school department share versus the city share. So they initially expected it to be about 15 based on what they were anticipating from the state budget, and it ended up being 18. If it had been 15, that split would have been similar, a little bit less. The 10 would have been more, 8 or 9, and the 7 would have been more 5 or 6. So they planned to have that money as part of their budget that they're spending on education.
Thank you, Mr. Satterwhite.
Thank you. My colleagues and Tiffany have already answered this question multiple times, but from fiscal year 19 till fiscal year 20, the amount that was increased in our budget in June prior to the approval of the 18, when we believed that it was 15 million, is the $11 million that is stated in this question. So our school budget is $159,300,000, which is an increase. Now the city, like my brother Jared has said, would utilize certain portions of the increase that we received on the city side to fund matters that are affiliated with the educating of our students. So it would be with the ISD or with health insurance or whatnot, but there's been really discussions with the city about the additional funding that needs to be addressed. I believe that this money that we received that should have went to education should have went to education, or at least a strong affiliation with that education. So it's important for us to work with the city side to ask questions as to where exactly these funds are going, and making sure that the city is utilizing these funds for the schools. And I think that as you can tell from what John said and what others said on the school committee, that's what we currently do. So it's important to know where the funds are going and making sure that they are being utilized for schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please pass the mic down to the beginning of the table? And we have Mr. Castellanos and Ms. Kohler left for this question.
So to go through, I think a lot of us just heard a lot of answers. I think it's very vital to ask. I ask a lot of questions. As a social worker, I ask millions of questions. That the way $7.3 billion is allocated, it's chalked down in new hires, contracts, so many different ways ISD takes the money. There's so many different ways that money could be allocated, but I believe, as my job as a school committee member is to advocate, to have extra funding to direct services to students and teachers. I feel very strongly about that. I stand in front of you guys because of these type of services. I think they have to think outside the box. And I understand, and going back to the city side, we have to be ambassadors for the school committee. So we have to build relationships and cultivate those relationships in a way where we can have transparency, not to be blindsided by with money, how money is being spent. And to really, you have to stay in sequence and really follow along and pay attention. You have to ask the questions. You have to be very steady and consistent. I think persistency with asking about when the money is coming in and when it's in the pipeline and how it's being spent is very, it comes in and it's spent. And we want to know what's being spent on. And I think when it came to, when we look at bills, and I understand bills, operational costs, this is what happens in a large district, and the city does, obviously they work towards utilizing those funds appropriately, and they have to work with us. And I think that's something that I've worked towards during my years of service areas, to figure out, okay, I need to know how that money is spent, like by the dollar. Like I want to know what's happening, and I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gabola?
Okay, wow. It's a big amount of money, I understand, but also I know from being on the school committee for a number of years that almost every year we've had major emergencies that the city has to come through with money to do repairs. So that's a big piece. I know a very small amount, and it was well worth it, is the settling of the contracts. What was budgeted in the budget is not sufficient, and that's per Mr. McHugh. So it's important that we are going to ask for money coming from that side to bring that to fund the contracts as they come along. It's embarrassing when we have teachers that are spending out of their pockets. It's embarrassing for me to know that they're doing that, and they should just be earning the check and not have to worry about things that we're not funding. But I think the biggest thing is, we as school committee people are going to have to push and ask them, what it's for. And I have seen over the years, just the emergency, just the conditions of our buildings has drained so much money. Classical, brand new building, it slowly sank in the areas, and it's embarrassing to pour good money over things that we shouldn't have to be pouring money into. But hopefully we don't have to do that, and we can look towards things like I would love to see after-school programs run by teachers with educational things happening for those kids with some of the money.
Thank you. Ms. Gately will start off the next question. Ms. Gately, the quality of the physical learning environment has been shown to have a direct and profound impact on the health and performance of students and teachers. Sadly, many Lynn schools have been identified as in need of extensive repair or replacement. As a school committee member, what is your role in assisting the city and the school department in acquiring new schools for our students?
Well, first of all, I'd like to mention that when I retired, my last job was at Pickering Middle School. I was the lead science teacher there. I was very concerned with those sub-basement rooms then, as I am now. I also worked at the old Eastern Junior High School, and that building was it was as bad as Pickering is now. So what would I do as a school committee member to improve on this? Well, first of all, as a school committee member, I went out with Brent Duncan, and I went out with a lot of people, and I did flyers, anything that was necessary to get that vote to pass for those two middle schools. What I could not fight against was the amount of misinformation that was sent out throughout our neighborhoods, throughout our senior citizens' buildings. So what I will do is when we get our name back on that list and we start going for new schools again, I will make sure that we have a lot of neighborhood meetings where we sit down with neighborhoods. I'll get into those senior citizens buildings, and I personally will be talking to the senior citizens and talking to people that do not have children in our schools, but we need to have new schools. So I will fight for that, so you can get that. And I guarantee that's what Lorraine Gately will be doing when those come up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Magnolia.
So before I ever decided I was going to run for school committee, I actually spoke at a school committee meeting, and one of the first things I ever said was that it seemed to me that the school committee needed to come up with a communication policy with regards to how new school buildings were going to be handled. What I experienced from the outside last time was very haphazard. The item had one thing, there would be a meeting announcement maybe on Facebook, maybe you would read about it on the city website. Some of the school websites had announcements, but other school websites didn't. And the lack of uniformity was very confusing to someone because my daughter was not yet in the public schools. And I was actively trying to find out this information. So it seems to me that the first thing we need to do is build an active communication structure that is going to go out first through the parents and the PTOs and the individual schools, and then second out into the community. Absolutely, we need to address senior citizens and folks like that, but the paltry amount of people who came out to vote during the last vote suggests to me that we did not mobilize parents in the way that we should have been. The amount of students that would be in those two new schools, if just the parents voted, we would have gotten them. If we don't build structures that will work for the schools, then we're going to be facing the same thing every time there's another vote. Consistency, regularity, the same languages, can't just be English and Spanish, it has to be multiple languages, and it has to be worked through the mechanisms that are already in place, like the school councils, the PTOs, and then out into the community. And I think that's the way you win new buildings. And let me just say, we must win new buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you. So the first part of our role in acquiring new schools is communicating the need. We're doing that now. You've heard us tonight throughout this campaign. We're definitely talking about the fact that we need new schools, we need more space. It's a top priority, and you'll hear us talk about that throughout the year. We talk about the budget, we talk about issues that are coming up on the school committee and communicating it as best we can. And that includes, in our role in the school committee, but also to our colleagues in city government and to our colleagues around town, and to just highlight how important this is and how really unacceptable the current state of affairs is. A city's physical capital in its public schools, the schools themselves are a representation of the priority that a city puts on education. And we need to show our kids that we care more about education than the state of our schools would suggest. We can prepare for the process. One of the issues that we've had in getting ready to go back into the MSBA was our ability to pay our contribution. And so we can be in dialogue with our counterparts on the city side about how we're getting ready to remedy that. And that's both on the city side and getting the right amount of appropriation for capital improvements that would lead to getting the funds we need to start the process. And also, if there's tweaks to the MSBA process that we can make that make it more feasible for us to be able to afford with the packages, then we can talk about those too. Once we're in the process, then we absolutely need to learn from what happened last time and be helpful in that process and offer tips from how we can better communicate, how we can better mobilize, how we can better plan so that we get more people all on the same page from the beginning. And so I think that would be the various stages for how we get us to get new schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our students deserve new schools. I think that the first thing we have to do is realize that households that don't have students in our schools might not see the value. So the fact that our students deserve and need new schools are just one thing, but we also have to let the city and voters know that it's not just our students that need new schools, our educators need new schools, our communities need new schools, our city needs new schools.
I think being proactive is vital. Even if we are in line waiting for MSBA, it could be 2 years, a year. We don't know when, but we need to be proactive in mobilizing the communication now. It needs to happen. I already have these conversations with both campaigns that went at it. It's important to get everyone together as a community, so when we re-campaign, we get it done. I'm willing to knock doors, hold signs, whatever we have to do to get it done. I don't have no ounce of I have so much energy to provide to make this happen. I am a firm believer of humanity in this city. And what I witnessed during that campaign was ridiculous. And we need to be adults, and we need to improve our schools, our physical environment for those students and generations to come. And that's what matters, the kids.
Thank you.
And the teachers.
Ms. Capola.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say that every school committee member that I served with this past 2 years worked hard and did things in support of trying to get new schools built. Mr. Ford and myself, we sat as members of the planning committee to try to build a new Pickering and another middle school down near Lynn Tech. And that is a necessary school also. The numbers here at Breed are bursting at the seams, and it's not fair to the students here, even though it's a nice looking building and everything. It's the number of students that are here. We served on it. I went to over 30 meetings, part of that planning. I took vacation time all the time, because unfortunately many of the meetings were during the day, because you got your salaried employees in City Hall who didn't want to have it in the evening. That was a big mistake, and we should have really pushed on our side, the school side. So I will make sure that doesn't happen again. And, you know, we kind of followed the format that they did for Thurgood Marshall. That was a different kind of a community neighborhood that was willing to, willing to build that school, and they were behind it. So it had different issues, so we couldn't compare them. You know, we know that we didn't do it right, but I know for a fact that this group here will work their heart out to make a difference and try to get the schools built.
Thank you. Mr. Ford?
This is something I get really fired up about. I could talk about all night, but I bet Gail won't let me. We need new schools. We all echo those words. Everyone that spoke tonight said we need new schools. The reality of the fact is that can't happen fast enough. If we got a school in the pipeline tonight, it'd be 3 to 4 years before that school could open. We have to go through the Mass Building Association, the School Building Association. And I have two daughters that are teachers. One works at Tracy, which is 121 years old. One works at Fecto, which is 110 years old. We need new schools at Avon, Tracy, Fecto, Pickering, and 7 right behind that. It can't be solved just by building our way out of the problem. Last Thursday at the school committee meeting, I emphasized the fact how quickly we need to look at portable classrooms. They're not the ideal situation. They're not fiscally prudent, but they serve the purpose. And we've got 1,896 kids right now at Lynn English. By next year, by September, we'll have 2,000 kids there. We need to do something. We got $1.3 million given to us this week that we have to spend by the end of June. Put it towards portable classrooms. Get the site preparation. Have one at Lynn English. Have one at Breed. We've got room at both of those places to put something in. We need them now. We can talk about new schools all night long. It can't happen fast enough to solve our problem. The problem, we just got 460 new high school students came in this past year. We just can't, send the time the other way. We have to find some way to do something now.
Thank you. Can you pass the mic to Ms. Magnolia? She will start off the last question. Respect for educators, or lack of respect, has come into question across our country. As members of the school committee, what do you think the educators of Lynn students feel? And what can you do to ensure teachers, paraprofessionals, and therapists feel respected?
So in my earlier answer, I talked a little bit about the state of the teachers, state of the staff kind of address. I'm not sure why something like that does not exist on the school committee as of yet, but I think it's hubris on the part of anyone to assume they know what it's like to do someone else's job. And it seems to me the best people to answer that question are teachers, not school committee members. And I think I'm going to take a page out of Brian's book. Sometimes it's time to sit and listen as opposed to tell other people how it is they're going to do their jobs. As I've always said to a family member of mine, everyone thinks they know how to be a teacher because they've had teachers. And it's sadly one of those professions. No one assumes they know how to be a banker because they have money. But it's one of the most unique professions, and I should admit, I did have my secondary teaching credentials. I could not hack it as a high school teacher. I went to graduate school, that's why I teach college. So kudos to all the high school teachers out there. But I think the second part of this, to make them feel respected, the answer is inclusion in decision-making processes to the best of our ability. I'm a big believer in structures. One of the wonderful things about a union is that you have building reps. You know which buildings people feel at a little bit of odds with their principals, which types of people get moved very quickly, even though they don't want to be moved, which types of jobs are itinerant and which ones should not be. And rather than, I heard the superintendent say, oh, this works really well for this group of teachers, I'd like to hear it from them that it works really well. And I think setting the tone for that respect has to do with the structure of the meetings and how we go about decision making. And I would love to see much more representation in those, and to also have the opportunity to look at how those can be represented in contracts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nicholson?
Thank you. So, with respect to the first part of the question about lack of respect around the country, I think that educators in the city of Lynn would feel under attack. There's been people are frustrated with the state of public education in communities around the country, particularly disparities in certain communities with less resources. And that frustration has been whipped into a sentiment that is blaming teachers in a lot of instances, and in some often really unfair ways. And so I absolutely would see why people would feel disrespected in terms of the way people talk about the teaching profession in communities that are getting that kind of attention. In terms of what we can do to help them feel respected, I think one thing is recognition. I really try to recognize and acknowledge the really wonderful work our teachers do in the district. It's advocating on issues that we think are important to them, and being open to feedback from them on those issues. My colleague, Ms. Gately, from when I remember starting working with her, has asked about doing a survey of teachers to get their feedback, which I thought was a really great idea, and something that the district has done for the first time this year. And I know there's been questions about implementation and things like that, but I think getting those opportunities for teachers to give us feedback, to give the district feedback, are really, really important, and can go a long way to help people feel respected. And then to be accessible. One of the things I love about being on the school committee is the opportunity to meet a lot of different people. And when I go around and knock on doors in the city and let the campaign, some of the favorite conversations I have are people who work in local public schools and have an opportunity now to give direct feedback, to meet people where they're at, and get that vantage point to people who may not otherwise have felt comfortable reaching out to a school committee member. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Satterwhite?
Thank you. So from my observations and feedback during the negotiations, I've been told, and I believe that teachers feel overworked and underappreciated. And I think that that's not fair. I think that being on the negotiation subcommittee, we were able to at least be a part of some of the solutions that we worked with the teachers union, making sure that teachers get additional prep time, fair compensation, and common sense benefits. Going to a graduation might not seem big to some people, but to others, it's a big deal. I think that what can we do to make sure that teachers start feeling respected is it starts at the top. If leaders in the schools respect our teachers, then students will witness this, and teachers will feel valued. I think that teachers, paraprofessionals, and therapists need a voice, and they need to be heard. I know that the Lynn Teachers Union does a good job collaborating with the administration to make sure that those voices are heard, but they only can do so much. So I think that the relationships have improved between the teachers union and the administration. I think that teachers are starting to feel like they're being heard with these surveys and whatnot. I think that if we go back to when I went to Fallon Elementary School and Mr. Reynolds was my principal, we had, Ms. Donovan was in her first year of teaching at the 6th grade at this particular school, and I witnessed how Mr. Reynolds came in, how he made sure that she had everything that she needed. If she needed a break, he would stand there in her classroom to allow her to take that break. That's the type of teamwork our schools need to see. Principals and leaders in the schools need to respect our teachers, and the students will see that. I respect our teachers. So that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Just pass the mic down.
If you're an individual who lacks respect for teachers, I will be the last person you want to be in the room with. I had the opportunity to go to New York with Lynn's Teachers Union. It was a wonderful, life-changing experience as a school committee member and also as a student, because I recently just graduated with my master's not too long ago, in 2016. I've always been so close to my educator, because my educator was the key to where I am today. They allowed me and empowered me to be where I am. And I was able to go into deep perspective when I got to go into trauma-informed workshops and restorative justice workshops. I really got to see department heads really express themselves in a way that I've never seen before. And they are real heroes, and our heroes feel burnt out, compassion fatigue, discouraged. And these are real feelings when you're not feeling appreciated, both at the school that they are or in the community. It impacts our equity for our students. And I believe what I can do to ensure that, and what I've done was to work on negotiations and be a strong advocate on fair compensation. I think we can pat a teacher on the back all we want, but they are underpaid, and we need to speak up about that. And I think that's what I brought to the table during negotiations, and I was very transparent in how I felt about it. I probably won't be on negotiations next time, but no, but it was a wonderful process where I believe that we can work together to inspire and reignite our educational community.
Thank you. Ms. Cabola?
Well, first of all, I'm the mother of 4 children that all went through the Lynn Public Schools, graduated from the Lynn Classical High School, grandmother of 5, they're in public schools, and was a foster parent to 19 foster children over a period of time that all went to public school. And I will tell you, I never heard a bad thing about their teachers. They love their teachers. And even today, my kids speak fondly of many, many teachers. You know, Mrs. Tuttle just passed away. My kids had her as an art teacher and really enjoyed her. So, I mean, I haven't heard it within my household. But, in saying that, the other thing too is many parents call us, and the parents that call us love their children's school, love the teachers, love the principals. So that's really important. But you have a national push to put in vouchers, put in charters, private schools are better. What is that all about? No wonder you feel that way. Why wouldn't you feel that way when you're hammered over and over and over again that these things would be better and how the vouchers would be better, how charters are better is beyond me. But I can also understand how teachers may feel because we're asking you to give our kids a 21st century education and we put 30 to 40 students in your room. So it's difficult and I understand how you would feel that way. But honestly, I don't think that it's your regular parents that are here that feel that way about you. So I hope that you feel the love from our students and parents right here in Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
This is something, I've got 4 daughters, too, as I said, are teachers, and they constantly remind me how valuable teachers are. And I have to agree with them. I mean, my 4 daughters have done very well. 2 went to Tech, 2 went to Glasgow. They've got great, great careers. The 2 that are teachers, I talk to on a daily basis. And, and I just had a meeting with Dr. Tutwell a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things I did stress was making teachers feel more appreciated. And I don't think we do that enough. The biggest thing that bothers me is the consultants that we hire. You bring in consultants to teach a classroom of teachers, and these consultants have never been in the classroom and try to tell teachers how they should be doing a better job in the classroom. I think that's embarrassing, it's condescending. They know, and another thing, a lot of people comment about, they only work 180 days, and they only work a 6-hour day. That's a myth. My oldest daughter works at Vecto. I'll be able to see you guys this afternoon when I get out of school. Almost all the time, it's 4:30, 4:45, 5 o'clock. And then she's tired and she's going home. She can't even stay for supper. She's going home, she's got to correct papers. It's not a 5-6-hour day. And it's not a vocation, it's an avocation. And if you don't love kids, you can't be a teacher. They become quasi-parents. I mean, particularly in these young grades, the kindergarten grades, they're spending 10, 12 hours with not the same teacher necessarily, but with a teacher. And that becomes the mother figure, or the father figure, if it's a male. And I just think you can't put a value on what they do. We've got a great bunch of teachers, and I hope we keep them happy.
Thank you, Ms. Gately.
I'm proud to say that I am a teacher. I was a teacher for 33 and a half years in Lynn Public Schools, and I have the utmost respect for teachers. How I felt when I was a lead science teacher at Pickering Middle School, and people were asking me to go for the job downtown. I'm glad I never got it. But to go for that job and to go through 2 interviews and the administration not to have any respect for me as a teacher, even though all my students, I run my classroom on respect, and I know all the educators out there do that too. You show respect to your students, the students show it back to you. I made sure when they were cutting the preschools down to a 2-3 day program, I took and I went to the early child, well, I did personally, the teachers snuck, the teachers, the paras, the, hold on this, I need my glasses for this, got 1 minute left, and the therapists, they wrote what was wrong. Their voices needed to be heard. I wrote a survey, and this superintendent at the time would not allow it to go out. She said some weird thing about it, so I couldn't give that survey. But I did sit down and I listened to people, and that's what you need to do to show respect to educators. Their voices should be heard. Every educator should be heard through a survey that goes to the administrators, and then the administrators have to listen to the teachers and take what they say, because they're in the trenches. Take what you say and what you know, your experiences, and express them and be respected so that they listen and make changes that you want to make because you're in the classroom and you see the changes that are needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to the closing statements, I want to thank you all for answering those very important questions and also for keeping to your 2 minutes. So we'll start with Mr. Nicholson. If you have a closing statement, here's your 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to the Lynn Teachers Union for hosting, to all of you for coming tonight, especially those of you who are educators, for all that you do for our students in Lynn Public Schools. I am truly honored to be part of the public education team in the city of Lynn, and I'm asking for one of your 6 votes to continue to serve. We do have a lot of work to do, and that work, I think, is going to be guided by the values that we recently adopted in Lynn Public Schools: inclusivity, shared responsibility, collaborative relationships, high expectations, and inspiring lifelong learning. Now, I've been thinking a lot recently about that last one, about lifelong learning, because of a couple things that are happening in my personal life. My wife and I are expecting our first child, and when I think about what I hope for that child, lifelong learning is really at the top of the list. And when I think about the coming formative years that we're expecting, I think about all the exciting things that are happening at Lynn Public Schools. The other personal change I have is I'm now a professor at Northeastern Law, and one of the most important lessons that I have for my students is how to learn. What to do when you don't know the answer to a legal question. And my mother was an early education teacher for over 30 years, and she taught her students the same thing: how to ask a question, what to do when you don't know. All teachers know how fundamentally important it is to be a lifelong learner. And it's wonderful, it's one of our guiding values. It's something that I keep in mind in my role in the school committee. We certainly have challenges before us. We talked about them tonight: overcrowding, inadequate resources, gaps in achievement, hoping we can help students continue to do better and better. I love learning from all of you, from teachers, more about those challenges so that we can continue to do better. And I hope you'll continue to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn Teachers Union, and those in the chairs out there that are watching us talk about what we believe is important in the Lynn Public Schools. These were all great questions. I think that they need answers that are thoughtful and actually get to the basis of what we're looking for. The Lynn Teachers Union has a vested interest in our schools. They have a vested interest in our students. And as a school committee member, we do as well. I think that as a parent of a daughter who's in the public schools, me being a part of the process is extremely important. Me being a voice for other parents is extremely important. I think as a special education attorney, and making sure that students are provided the accommodations that they need in order to learn is extremely important, and that insight that I have has been helpful on the committee. I think that being a part of the Lynn Community Connection Coalition with Brian and Donna Capola, which is a nonprofit where we're a voice for the community and those kids that are most vulnerable in the community. And the 2 years that I've had on the school committee has been great. I enjoy every single day. I think that I need to continue to be a part of the committee so I can continue to focus on with my fellow school committee members the hope of each student. Hope is the health and wellness of all of our students. The opportunities that we bring to our students need to bring value to their lives. We need to make sure that we're providing educational preventions for our students, which includes bullying, drugs, etc. We also need to be sure that we're providing the best possible education to each and every single student, including my daughter. It's vital. Education is vital in every single community. More importantly, in an urban district like we have today, where there's a huge need. And we have to remember that and continue to do good work for the students in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had to hold some emotions in. I used to think I was a broken kid. I never knew my life was going to turn out the way it did. it was really the public educator that recognized my potential. And it's something that I utilize every day as a social worker, as an adolescent DCF, child protective social worker. Every day I'm on the ground with teachers, social workers, therapists in the courts. I use my platform to inspire those same kids like myself who, when we discuss social emotional learning programming, I am the product of social emotional learning success. It means more to me than anything to be able to give back to these kids, to these teachers, to the city of Lynn, Massachusetts, to break that stigma that 781, you can win. Lynn, City will win. And whatever way I have to do it, I'm going to get it done. I'm not afraid to speak up. I'm an advocate for educational leaders. I am an advocate for children. I am an advocate for humanity. My love for philanthropy is expressed by action. Talk is cheap. It's time to take action. If you're looking for a leader and someone to take action and to step up, when the call comes in, there's people in the crowd that called on me and I picked up and answered. I've embraced every moment on the school committee as a learning opportunity. And I want to say thank you to every educator that has had an impact in my life. I want to thank Jimmy Tidmarsh from my history class that believed in me when I was in history, falling asleep, knowing I was working full-time, sleeping in my car, telling him I got his cousin.
Thank you. Good job. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'd like to thank the teachers union. This is for me, the best part of running is coming to the forums. We have about 6 or 7 that are happening this election cycle, and I think that you get rejuvenated, you hear exciting things, you just remind yourself that you have done some good, and that's an important piece, so thank you for having it. And secondly, I'm very proud of the students. You know, you take a school year and you get to the end of the school year, and this year we saw within our high schools over 1,000 high school students graduate this year, and how many of them going on to higher education, into the military, into training programs. It's a time to be really, really proud of them and realizing, I hope that teachers themselves are proud as they look at those graduation names and remember kids that they had along the way that they thought, well, maybe this one isn't going to make it, but then you see them that they've graduated, so you can be really proud of them. There's still a lot to be done on this job. Every day is something new. Before I left, I had 3 phone calls on my machine. My husband says, do it before you go. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it after. But it's a very exciting job, and I hope that you give me one of your 6 votes to send me back. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to also thank the Teachers Union, Sheila and the Teachers Union for allowing us the opportunity tonight. I've been on the school committee 18 years. I love it. I wouldn't keep doing it. I've got the qualifications. I got a BS in sociology, a master's in education. I got 35 years of management experience. I worked eight years in the State House, so I know how some of that stuff works. And the biggest thing I've got is I've got a wife of 53 years that has stuck by me. She's the reason I'm here today. So I figured this year, after 53 years, I'd give her a little input. And I said, "Oh, what do you think? Should I run again?" She goes, "If you don't run again and don't get elected, you're going to be sending on a house a miserable grump." So I'm asking you, on November 7th, please give me one of your votes so I won't be Sheila's miserable grump. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Lynn Teachers Union for this opportunity. I am the chairperson for curriculum, and my goal as that chairperson is to watch over that curriculum and watch over your test scores and make sure that that curriculum is allowing you to reach and teach all the students in front of you. And what I strive for is excellence in education. My experience as a teacher has allowed me to be your voice. And everyone talks to me, all the teachers. They bump into me. I'm up at the golf course, you know, some people know that. I'm out at a game, and they always come and talk to me. And they let me know what's actually happening. And sometimes that's not too good for the administration. When I go out and I go to graduations like Donna has mentioned, all these teachers come up and they give me a big hug, they talk to me because I listen, and I will do my best to help you with any problem you will have in your trying to have excellence in education in your classroom. I have been a teacher, like I said, 1,000 times, 33 and a half years. And I was a student in Lynn, graduated in Lynn, my son graduated in Lynn English, and I taught, and you trusted me with, the citizens in Lynn has trusted me with their child, and now I'm asking you to trust me with one of your 6 votes so I can continue to be your voice on the Lynn School Committee. Thank you.
Thanks again to the Lynn Teachers Union, and I just want to say the challenger in me doesn't want to correct John, but the ethical person wants you to know that the election is November 5th. So, yeah, don't go to vote on November 7th. No one will be there for you to vote, so please go vote on November 5th. So I just wanted to say that I didn't talk very much about my classroom experience. I do have 20 years of teaching under my belt. I know it's at the college level, but one of the things that I would bring to bear as a new person on the school committee is that I see a lot of Lynn public school graduates at the community college. And I see graduates who walked very successfully across that stage, and people who didn't quite graduate, did their GEDs, maybe had a baby or two, came back. There's all kinds of versions of graduates that I see at the college, and I do have a good sense of how the academics are strong and where some of the other issues might be that I would work specifically on in the school committee. But the other thing that I would bring to bear is that I don't have a very steep learning curve when it comes to educational policy. My educational advocacy goes back to 2007 at the state level and throughout this part of Massachusetts. If you want to know what the Beverly teachers get when they do after-school activities, I can tell you that figure off the top of my head when it comes to things like contract negotiations or when it comes to kinds of enrichment that our students might benefit from. So I'm hoping to bring that educational experience to bear, and I'm hoping to bring that advocacy experience to bear, and I would ask for one of your 6 votes as a new face on the school committee and the face of a parent of a Lynn Public School student. Thank you.
Okay, on behalf of the Lynn Teachers Union, I'd like to thank you all for sharing your thoughts with us tonight, and I'd like to thank everyone in the room here for coming out and listening, and everyone watching. And we hope that to see you at the polls and vote.
Yep, I just wanted to say thank you very much to all the candidates for school committee. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your answers. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for coming out. We'll be discussing this forum at our next union meeting, which is on Wednesday, October 16th. Starts at 3:30. Hope to see you there.